Yes, I have loved you with an everlasting love, an everlasting love, an everlasting love. Therefore, with loving kindness have I drawn you, drawn you, drawn you.
Yeah, we're recording now.
Okay, we had Chastity get back from the March for Life. And I don't know if you remembered that the last podcast we did was before she went. And we talked a lot about pro-life issues. And so she had an interesting time and has a lot to report about that. And then we're also going to talk about another side of this issue that doesn't get addressed. Because last time we talked a lot about the reality of abortion and why it's wrong, and all that's necessary to point out. We need to face the reality of it and what's really going on. And it's a very controversial thing, and you'll see even more about that, when she shares some of what happened there in Washington, D.C. But then there's another side of it that I want to talk about as well. And so this is actually Pro-Life Thoughts Part 2, so that we can continue to discuss this particular issue. Okay, so we're going to have Chastity tell about her trip and some of the highlights of what happened.
Yes, thank you, Mom. So, in episode 18, our last episode, I was talking about how I was planning to go to Washington, D.C. for the March for Life. And I was worried about the travel aspect because airports are scary, and I don't... But at least I wasn't traveling alone. And I had my guys with me. I had Jason and Jeffrey, and they bought me the plane ticket, and they made sure I safely got with them to Washington, D.C. It turned out all right. I'm just glad I had them with, because I would not have known what I was doing.
Yeah.
But, so we get to Washington, D.C., and I was a little sleep deprived because I couldn't really sleep on the plane very well. Plus, it was a short flight. And then we had our party that night. We had a soiree, is what it was called, a dance party, sort of a celebration, but sort of a get-together for people. And the interesting thing is, the original venue that we had supposed to rent it out, they gave our reservation to someone else.
A different group.
And we think it was because they didn't want a pro-life group, or it could have been they didn't want... we're different because we're the Rainbow Pro-Life Alliance, so
there's more than one issue involved.
Right,
there.
so it could be discrimination against pro-life people, it could be discrimination against the gays. We don't know what was happening.
Yeah.
So basically, we had to rent out a bar for a few hours. So it was strange. So I was with people that I had seen on the Zoom meetings, the regular board meetings, and other meetings with the Rainbow Pro-Life Alliance that we do over Zoom, but I got to see people in actual person, and it's even better being around people, and I met people that I had never met before that night, and so I got to dance to music, I got to eat a vegan meal at that bar. It's like a restaurant, too. They have like all this fancy food and stuff, too. It was called the Renegade, which is an interesting name. So, but after we did that, then the next day was the actual March for Life. So that's when, everybody goes to Washington, D.C. in the inner city of it, and they blocked off several roads. So the cars can't drive on those roads, and they have police officers everywhere, and there's all these groups. But see, I was with the alternative pro-life groups, because there's... the majority of these events, like different groups, they like the Catholic groups, they organize together, and there's other groups like the White Rose Society. There's different groups, but I was with the alternative pro-life meetup people. So we're talking, all the misfits of society. The atheists, the agnostics, people of other religions. The gays, the transgenders, everybody who is considered not normal, the alternative people. And I'm very alternative. So
the oddballs.
Yeah, basically. So I was with a group of other people who, just like me, are not mainstream. And I think this is important. This is extremely important to mention because basically what's been happening in America, and I'm sure you've seen this, Mom, the pro-choice movement that's all for abortion and killing babies has been trying to tear down Christianity because they think that being pro-life they think it's like a Christian religion thing, and they think it's specifically the Catholics and stuff. And the thing is, yes, certain religions, and not just to be clear, there's people of all religions who can use their scriptures to justify either pro-life or pro-choice by cherry picking their books. But they think that by attacking the Catholics or whatever, that they can get rid of the pro-life people. But it's deeper than that. It goes beyond whichever God you happen to follow or whichever religion and which holy book you read. That's not what it's about. It's because murder is wrong. And murder of the innocent is particularly wrong. And that's really what it is about for me and other people. And that's the thing is, we had all the people. We had all kinds of different people, groups like Secular Pro-Life and Rehumanize and some others I can't remember the name of, and it was just nice. And so several people were giving a speech to represent their group. So like Monica Snyder, I believe, did the Secular Pro-Life speech, so I listened to her. So we had like probably 10 to 12 people give like a 3-minute speech. And Jason decided that I would be the one to represent our group. Well, plus I volunteered, because he sent out an email at the beginning of January saying we were invited to the alternative pro-life meetup, and he's like, does anyone want to give a speech? And I'm like, well, I will, because I'm the writer, so I wrote up a speech, and then he said it was too long, and I condensed it, but it was too long, so I had to recondense my condensed, and I barely just did it. Like basically 3.5 minutes I gave my speech, and I have the text posted on my Facebook and YouTube, and even a video that Susan recorded of me giving my speech. But all the speeches were really good, and my speech was about people. Of course, people will be able to read it too. But it was like I'm the last person you expect to see at a pro-life event, because people think, well, why would a transgender person, or why would the gays be all, pro-life? Because they think, Christianity hates you and pro-life is a Christian thing.
Yeah.
No, well, first of all, somebody's got to save the gay babies from their straight parents who are trying to kill them. So there's that. But it's wrong regardless of what you are.
Well, they assume you're just too heathen to be of any good in life.
I know. I mean, look, I can be evil in certain ways, but that has nothing to do with me being transgender. But anyway.
That's kind of scary. We don't know what kind of evil you might be next.
Well, yeah, I cheat at single-player video games with my math skills, so.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the evil I'm referring to, is I use my computer hacking skills to screw around with video games. So that's what it is. Anyway, back on topic. And then we had the actual march, where we were holding signs, and they had like these pro-life chants and stuff they did. It was really cool. So we're walking. I get to see all these buildings and stuff around DC. And there was this one point that I'll never forget about how there was some lady sitting somewhere that said, "Adam and Eve, only 2 genders," and I just completely ignored her, acted like I didn't hear her. But clearly she saw, some of us, with our sign and dressed in rainbows and stuff. And so she just wanted to make a statement like that against us, like, oh well, there's only Adam and Eve, there's only two genders.
Yeah.
And so it was right while I walked by, so I almost felt like it was targeted at me, but I just completely ignored her. I wasn't going to let her spoil the mood.
Right.
But it's just a very strange, and my speech was about how everyone needs to work together. This idea that everybody is all divided, like you're Democrat, you're Republican, you're gay, you're straight, you're atheist, you believe in God or whatever. Like there's all these different sides, and people should all be on the same side when it is in regard to what we think about murder of the innocent. And that's what it's about. So I was very glad to go, because it was a chance to be around some people that I knew but I never really had seen in person, and just so that I was there. People saw me. It was recorded. All kinds of people saw me. And the highlight of this whole time was, it was just outside, like, this building where I guess Congress met or whatever.
Yeah, the Capitol building.
So that's what they call it. So there was some counter protesters. There was some pro-choice people there who were trying to shout, "Pro-life is a lie. You don't care when people die," which is kind of dumb, because the actual point is we do care when people die. That's what the whole point is, why we're pro-life and we're against abortion. And so they were doing that, and I said back to them, "Pro-choice is a lie. Babies don't choose to die." And then this lady hands me the megaphone. And so then I say it again. And then I had this megaphone in my hand. I'm like, I have way too much power. I have a megaphone. So what do you think I did? I started singing. So I sang Holding Out for a Hero by Bonnie Tyler. Where have all the good men gone, and where are all the gods? So I sang that, and then by the time I got done singing, I noticed all those pro-choice people were gone. I probably
you scared them away.
I think I scared them away with my singing, and I felt like a winner. I felt like I was the hero of that time, because I just scared these people away. It's like. But it was just nice, because I felt like I'm just so intimidated. Because, like I mentioned, even at work, on lunch break, in the break room at Walmart, when people are talking bad about pro-life people, and people talk bad about people like me and my beliefs, I can't say anything, because I'm at work with these people. And if I say anything, if I let on that things bother me, they'll just do it worse. But here, it was a different environment. I was in Washington, D.C., and the people who live in D.C. are not people who know me. I probably won't see them again. And so I just felt like there was really nothing holding me back. Plus, I wasn't on the clock. I wasn't at a workplace. So I felt free to express myself. So there I was at the Capitol building with a megaphone, singing and scaring away the pro-choice people. And then other people start singing and dancing with me. And I basically had my own little concert outside the Capitol building. It was hilarious. It was nice. So I had a good time. I got to do fun stuff, meet good people. But just to be out there and say, you know what, I'm a freak of nature, but I'm pro-life. And so if people look at me, if they might realize, well, if Chastity can be whatever she is, then maybe I can be pro-life too, or whatever else it is that you believe in. If you think, oh, well, I can't have this opinion because I'm this, well, you can. Don't ever let anybody tell you what you can and can't be, and I should know.
I have a question that's not related to the topic. Doesn't this need to be plugged in, or will it run out while we're using it?
Actually, let's see. I think we'll have enough battery.
Okay.
Oh, we got 94% battery.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure, because usually you plug it in. And
right.
I didn't want us to be in the middle of our podcast and
right.
then have it just go dead because
right.
we didn't plug it.
We're still at most full battery, and we'll probably go for about an hour or so anyway.
Yeah, let's hope we don't go too much longer than that.
But yeah, in summary, the Washington, D.C. trip was a complete success. And so we could, I was thinking that we could talk more about, pro-life things in general, and I know you had some things to share too, because there's a lot that needs to be said.
Right. Yeah. And so I actually not only wanted us to be able to report on how all that went and talk about that, but I felt like I should add some things from last week. And actually, just like I've been praying about it, and just last night, as I was going to sleep and during the night, I think God showed me what we need to add to this. First of all, we don't want to leave it on a negative note. Now, it's important to point out the truths about what abortion really is, that it's murder. And so many people want to run away or hide from that fact and pretend it's not a big deal. And so we were talking about some pretty serious things that a lot of times people don't want to hear. And Chastity and I were discussing about that, how, people don't want to see these pictures of what really happens to aborted babies, and they don't want to see the horrible things that go on with animal slaughter, because they'd rather just put their head in the sand and pretend it's not happening, so they don't have to feel responsible for taking a stand against things that shouldn't be happening. And so a lot of times it's important to help people understand and to make it real. But then there's another side to this that I felt like I knew there was more that needed to be said. And what God was putting on my heart is it's time for us to look at another side of this as well. Because there's many people who in the past were involved in abortion in different ways. And many of them, not just mothers, but other people that were involved in maybe pressuring women to go and get an abortion and pay for it. And so a lot of times they, would deceive these women and coerce them and make them think it wasn't that big a deal and it's the only way. So a lot of people were involved in that later regret it. Mm-hmm. And then they feel bad, and they feel guilty, and they can't forgive themselves, and they think God can't forgive them. And so I felt like we need to also explain that even though it is a wrong thing, just like a lot of other things that are wrong, it's not that God can't forgive you, or that, and that you don't need to feel condemned the rest of your life over it.
Yep.
Because for one thing, if you've given your life to God, He forgives everything. And you just bring it to Him. And one sin isn't any worse than another. Even though in our society, there's usually more penalties for certain things, like murder, but in this case, they legalized this kind of murder. And so people think it's not as bad just because it's legal. Yeah. But it still is murder, and that needs to be pointed out. However, in God's eyes, one person's sin is not any worse than another. Because everybody's fallen into some sort of sin for different reasons. And 1 John 1:9 says, if we confess our sins, He is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So if you've been involved in abortion in any way and then feel bad about it later, all you have to do is confess it to God and let Him manifest His forgiveness. He wants to forgive you. Mm-hmm. He wants to welcome you, and He loves you. And so He doesn't want you to feel condemned for the rest of your life. Now, what's interesting is that many people who afterwards regret it and understand, and even some people we've known of that were involved in bringing about abortions. They repented of it. And now so many of them, and so many women who'd gotten abortions and regret it now, they become part of the pro-life movement.
Yep.
And they speak and they address situations all over the world. And so many people, even women that are getting really elderly, have never been able to tell anybody about what happened. And they've been feeling horrible all their lives over an abortion. And when some of these other women speak about what happened to them and how God was able to help them overcome it and heal from it, all of a sudden they cry and they get healing, because this is the first time anybody else addressed it, and they never were able to tell anybody what they went through over it. So people suffer, and not only the mothers, but other people that have been involved in it, fathers, even a lot of the abortion doctors and stuff, many of them regret it, and they repent before God, and God forgives them. He forgives anybody. He loves everybody, and everybody that comes to him. And another thing I want to share is that I've seen some different pro-life, I've seen near-death experience situations and of people who've had abortions. And they're thinking, okay, part of the reason they don't think they can forgive themselves is they think the child they aborted can't ever forgive them. And what's really beautiful is not only does that child go to be with God, and then they're taken care of there in heaven, but there have been many of mothers and even fathers that were involved in some type of abortion with their children that have had these near-death experiences, and they visited heaven and they've met their children that have been aborted. And these children just love them, welcome them, they're glad to see them. They have no problem forgiving them, because they're in an environment where they're learning to understand what's really going on. And they know the love of God. And I've heard stories about that there's been a lot of healing occur. Because I know this one mother, I remember, apparently she'd aborted a couple of kids. And she had a little boy and a little girl waiting in heaven for her. And they came to her, they were glad to see her, they told her they loved her, they got on her lap, and they told her they forgave her a long time ago. So there's no thing. Even though we need to make sure we don't do wrong, God can still turn things around for good. And it's not that you have to hold on to that grief and remorse and condemnation the rest of your life, because you can be forgiven by everyone involved, and you don't have to feel like it's just hopeless. So I felt like it's important to mention that side of it, not to give up in despair if you realize later that it wasn't the right thing to do. Many of them, like I said, they get involved in the pro-life movement, and then they're able to do a lot of good and reach a lot of people. And God can turn all these bad things into something good and use it in spite of how bad it was. Just like those of us that have been victims, like in my case, like of child abuse, God showed me that he can use it for good. Yeah, it wasn't his will that I go through it, but he can take the bad things and turn them into something good and use those things, to help me and help others, and to have me write my books and to share, things that will help other people. God can take anything. He doesn't let our suffering be wasted, and he can use it for good. And so even though it's wrong to do certain things, he doesn't want us to remain feeling, just sad forever and not have any hope that God can redeem what's happened. So I just felt like I needed to emphasize that. We did have to talk about the negative side of it before, because a lot of people, like I said, they don't want to hear it. And they need to face reality. And we need to make changes in this world that we can make. And not just let bad things happen that don't have to happen. Because a lot of it does involve people's choices. And it can make a difference what kind of choices they make. But all is not lost. So if you have made a mistake and you've done things you regret, you need to know that God has full forgiveness for you, wants to forgive you. He wants everybody back in your life that needs to be back in your life, and doesn't want you to live in regret forever and ever. And I felt like that was an important message that perhaps many people need to hear. And so there was one thing I know that Chastity was talking about as well when we were discussing some of this. She was talking about how one of the things that needs to be clarified too is, and she actually wrote a book about this as well, is that people tend to blame the women, and many, many times the men are more responsible. And so could we talk about that a little bit, about the reasons why that, people say, well, mothers shouldn't do that and kill their babies.
Yeah.
But how so much of the time it's not all women involved. Many times it's men and their idea to have abortions for different reasons. Like we talked about usually it's the male doctors that, that try to make money from it. And then there's a lot of boyfriends and husbands that coerce their wives or girlfriends to get an abortion. And because they don't want to take responsibility for a child. So there's a lot of factors, either greed or just selfishness. And like I said earlier, a lot of times these women are deceived into thinking it's not a big deal until afterwards it hits them. Hey, I just killed my own baby. And yet they're not the only ones that killed it.
Yeah.
So could you talk about that some more?
Yes. See, here's the thing. First of all, abortion was a man's idea. The whole thing, the legalization, the promotion, has been promoted and funded by men in a large part. And I find it so ironic when people try to say, oh, well, you're a man, so you can't have an opinion. No uterus, no opinion, whatever, on abortion. But first of all, it was men campaigning to try to get it legalized in the first place. And men the boyfriends and husbands of these women who have sex with them, get them pregnant, and yet they have no intention for taking any responsibility. They don't want children. They don't want to take care of children. So what do? They divorce their wife over it. They will just kick them out of the house, leave them homeless. And I think you should tell your story about your friend who. Okay. Yeah, about what you told me before.
Yeah, I have a friend that I knew for many years and was quite close to. And I actually think she might have died by now. I haven't heard from her for a long time. She did have an illness that probably took her life. But she and we were about the same age, but we knew each other for years and years. And she had 3 kids, with her husband. But then they were having marriage problems. And she kind of ran away from her husband for a while, and she got involved with another man, and then she got pregnant. And then finally, her husband wanted her to come. I don't know if she had ended up having to break up with that other guy or what happened, but she didn't have a place to live. She was homeless. So her husband told her the only way she could come back and live with him is if she aborted that baby. And so she didn't know what to do. She wanted the baby. And she she was resentful, but she didn't know what to do. And she told me, she says, I wouldn't have had a place to live. So she went ahead, and then, of course, he paid for it, and he pressured her into it. And she told me all about what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then they ended up divorced anyway. And I think part of it was she just had all that resentment toward him making her have that abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, she did remarry, and then she had another child. But I just remember what she went through and how she felt so bad about it. And yet God helped her too, because she told me later that, and I was one of the few people that even knew what had happened, because I was one of her closest friends, and she didn't want me to tell anybody else for obvious reasons. You know, all the shame people put on you anyway. So anyway, but she told me that she went to some kind of a Christian meeting. I think there was some kind of a speaker or something. And there was like a word from God, and she was like sitting in the front row, and she knew it was straight for her. And God was trying to let her know that it was okay, and that, you know, she wasn't a bad person, and that he loved her. And see, she was a Christian woman, but she ended up being pressured into this abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was going through so much over that. And anyway, so God ministered to her about that. But I know this kind of thing happens a lot. And how so many times it is a man that's forcing, you know, a woman to get an abortion, and then the women always get blamed for it.
Yeah.
And, you know, said, well, you know, how should we punish a woman who, you know, has an abortion? And see, what about the other people involved? It's not just always just women and mothers that end up in that situation. Maybe some of them don't care if they're killing their kids, but I think a lot of them do care. And they have that motherly instinct and want to protect their children, and then men pressure them. And men have so much control usually, financially and otherwise. And so a lot of times it is men who all they care about is either making money or not having to take care of a child, but they want to keep having sex.
Yeah.
And they want to keep using women in that way, but not have any responsibility for a child.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing is, you can't call it a woman's right to choose when the woman has no choice and she's being pressured into it. They're literally, some of them, their husbands will threaten to leave them homeless, kick them out, or they'll even threaten to kill them, if you know. And and people are trying, and some people try to say, well, if abortion is made illegal, then these you know, women's husbands will kill them because they can't have an abortion like he wants them to. And so basically, the whole pro-choice movement and keeping abortion legal is about pleasing abusive men who are abusing women in the first place. And honestly, I feel like the most feminist, the most women empowering thing you can do is to be pro-life and to outlaw abortion. And here's why. Because this stops these men from being able to abuse women in that specific way. And if abortion is illegal, then these men can't force women to abort their children when a lot of these women don't want to even. And then force sue these men, make them pay child support, make them take some responsibility. And I feel like in a way that really leads to an all over better world, because then people won't get involved in these sexual relationships with people they don't even love, that they don't care about, and they're just using them. And it would probably lead to less unhealthy abusive relationships, because people would be more hesitant to get involved with people. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like the legalization of abortion, which was done by 9 men on the Supreme Court, you know, and then there's been all these, sometimes it'll be the husbands or the boyfriends, and sometimes it'll be the parents. It'll be, and this is hypocritical, but there's people who call themselves Christians who they find out their teenage daughter, for example, got pregnant. They were having sex and they got pregnant. So then they threaten to kick their daughter out of the house unless she gets an abortion. They do the same thing to their own daughter that your friend's husband did to her.
Right.
And so this is the problem: is that people care more about the reputation of their family. And like someone finding out, oh, their daughter had sex, and so they would rather murder someone to help their reputation. I don't see. I fail to see how having a reputation as a murderer is better somehow. I fail to see that part.
Well, that's trying to please people.
Yeah.
But what about your reputation with God?
Yeah. Yeah. See, here's the thing about it. Speaking of reputation, now, a person like me is not pro-life for the sake of reputation. Because all it does is get people to either yell at you in real life or to harass you on Facebook or whatever. It doesn't... I've only had people criticize me and argue against me. And people... Here's what people do. They say, oh, well, you're a pedophile because you have a fetus fetish and you care so much about babies, but you don't care about real people, as they say. Well, and what they mean is these ugly ass adults who are being meaner, who are the ones arguing with me. Now, maybe, Mom. Okay, Mom. Here's the thing. Let me tell you honestly. Maybe the reason that I like fetuses better is because they are not the ones giving me crap. They're not the ones trying to argue with me. And maybe by the time that they're old enough to argue, I probably won't be alive anymore. So maybe, so yeah, it's easier to like those who are not causing me harm, you know. So, but let's just say it's if you're trying to be popular, if you're trying to increase your chances of social networking, if you're trying to increase your chances of employment or being accepted in a religion or any part of any social club anywhere, you don't tell people you're pro-life. But seeing as how I'm a freak of nature and I'm transgender and I'm an autistic computer programmer and chess player, I don't have any reputation left to lose anyway. So you could say it's easier for me to be pro-life. Like, well, just give people one more reason to hate me. But all that matters is my mommy who loves me, because my mommy didn't abort me. See. So and she's the friend I've always had, Yeah,
well, I felt like it was really important not only to report how it all went and what good might have been accomplished with the influence of Chastity going, but we really needed to finish up and tell the other side of this story, because that's an important part too. So many people carry around that burden and are just feeling condemned, and they think that God hates them. And see, this is one of the things we're trying to accomplish through these podcasts, is to learn about God's love, and that He does love us all. He loves those little babies, but He also loves everybody, that no matter what they've done, and just wants us to come to Him. And He wants to forgive us. He provided for our forgiveness. And He wants to fully forgive us and take away that guilt and blame and regret and fear of punishment. Because He wants all of us to be with Him in heaven. And He wants to redeem whatever we've been through and whatever we've done, and turn it for good. And so I felt like there were people that really needed to hear that message and that side of it. Yeah. It's good to fight, against the bad things. But it's also good to recognize that we have no right to condemn anybody about any of this, or even to condemn ourselves, because all we have to do is go to God and repent. And another part of that story that I was telling you, that even though they ended up in divorce, my friend had gone through that with her husband, and they did end up divorced later. However, I actually was before I really knew the whole story of what had happened, I was actually there visiting with my friend at her home after she got back with her husband. She had told me about the abortion, but I didn't know all the details of what had happened and how much her husband had forced her into it. But I was involved in pro-life things, and I happened to have these little pamphlets that were kind of like little tracts, but they help people see, what was really going on with abortion. And it didn't have anything real graphic, but it did have a little picture of like a small baby inside the womb that was, you could tell it had been hurt in some way. And then it explained on this little pamphlet about, how to be pro-life and how to help stop abortion and what was going on with these little ones. And you know what? I ended up leaving it there at her house on her coffee table. And later she told me when her husband came home and saw that he went into his bedroom and he cried and he repented of what he had done by trying to force, my friend into an abortion. So it got a hold of him and it convicted him. And he repented. And so even these men who have done this, they can repent too and be forgiven.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just something that we all need to keep in mind. Sometimes they just need that little drop of truth to wake them up, and then they can repent too. Because we've all done things wrong in different ways. And just like we're saying, some people think that some sins are worse than others. It's true that society has more of a problem with certain sins because there's worse penalties and consequences usually for murder, unless it's been legalized like abortion. But and other certain things, and there's like a scale of what's considered a worse crime than others, and there's a reason for that too, because if you're more of a danger to society, they do have to lock you up. But in God's eyes, He loves everybody. And He doesn't condemn people, and He has no problem forgiving people, because He knew from the very beginning that people were going to do wrong and that He wanted to totally forgive them and provide forgiveness for them. And so this is what people need to know, that Jesus came to provide that for everybody. And don't say, well, my sins are worse than everybody else's, so God doesn't want me. Because that's just plain not true.
Well, yeah, see, this idea that, oh, well, I've done something wrong, therefore, I just can't be forgiven. And then, of course, I think religious teachings often heard this even worse. It's like, because this idea of, like, oh, you go to hell because you're bad or whatever, and which is a weird thing, because all that does is that causes more bad behavior.
Oh, yeah.
Because here's what happens. People have decided, well, I've done wrong, I'm a sinner, so I'm just bad, so it doesn't matter what I do. And that's the effect psychologically that I've seen it have on people. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, now, here's some advice I have for people who are struggling with that is, for me, the way I had to escape that trap, because it's a condemnation trap. It just gets you feeling like you're just bad no matter what you do. Then you're just never going to be accepted by not only people but God. And here's how I escaped it. And this is just the weirdest thing. I basically realized that, well, if I'm just doomed, if there's nothing I can do that's going to make anything any better, then maybe I should be living to do the right thing, not seeking the opinions of people or worrying about how punished or rewarded I'm going to be in the afterlife or anything, and instead it made me reevaluate everything. Like, and I think this is I think this is healthy for people to reevaluate, well, what is your ethical framework? Study different religions, read philosophy and ethics and stuff, and try to figure out, well, what is right or wrong? Because people, what they do is their idea of something being right or wrong is, oh, well, because it's legal or illegal according to the government of their specific country. And that's important because every country has different laws. Yeah. And so if something is right, it's right regardless of whether it's legal or illegal.
Right.
And if it's wrong, it's also wrong regardless of whether it's legal or illegal. And here's the thing is, if it's also based off of what the Bible says or some other holy book or even what God says, the question is, if something is wrong, can it be made right just because God says it's right? Or can it be made right if God says it wrong? Like you know what I'm saying? Like, basically, does it depend on hearsay, opinions, or is there a logical way of knowing whether something is right or wrong?
Yeah. Well, like I've said, we should ask questions and we should seek truth. And God doesn't mind us asking questions and trying to keep ourselves ignorant and not learn about other religions doesn't help us find the right one. We need to be aware of all of them. And then, as you know, I do believe in God, and it didn't cause me to go against my beliefs to find out what other people believe. In fact, anything, it made it stronger for me to study about the different religions and see the difference between true Christianity and these other religions. And so trying to stay ignorant and not learn about it because you're too scared to know what's true, you'll never find the truth just by running away from learning new things and learning to understand. But you have to keep asking questions. You have to keep seeking truth. You have to keep praying that God will give you wisdom and understanding. And then He does. He shows you, He helps you discern things and shows you the difference between right and wrong. And see, Chastity's a real philosopher. And so the way she talks about things, sometimes it sounds, how should I say it? I'm trying to think, what's the word?
Nerdy?
Well, yeah, but it starts with an A.
Autistic?
No, that too, but instead of subject, it's not analytical. I'm trying to think of the right word. Well, I can't think of it. So, and usually I think
alternative.
See, all these things are true.
Okay, how about people? If my mom ever thinks of what the A word is she's thinking, we'll put it in the description. How about that?
Yeah, well, kind of like out there when you are thinking about philosophical things.
Abstract?
Abstract! That's it. Yeah. See, when you're talking like that, you're sounding very abstract. Because you were how are you saying that? Finding truth, and how will you know what's right or wrong regardless of what even God says? You're getting off in these abstract philosophical ways of expressing, and so that might be misunderstood.
Yeah.
Because then people say, well, doesn't he know what he believes? Or she, whatever it is.
I can tell people what I believe, but I'm suggesting they educate themselves. But here's what it comes down. First of all, you have to understand is I'm actually not abstract. So I'm very concrete. I'm very literal and physical with
Yeah,
examples.
but you sound abstract when you
That-
when you talk the way you do.
Yeah, that's-
like a philosopher.
Yeah, that's because people who haven't heard and read all the things that I've studied and all that, they don't know what I'm talking about. Just like computer
Yeah.
programming, like it's a real thing, but they don't know.
Because, the words you use sound abstract to most people. They're like,
Yeah.
well, what in the world does this person actually believe? They're talking like way above our heads. And see, that's what Chastity does when she's talking about math and computers. Because
Yeah.
she's a genius in that area. She gets way over my head. And so when she's talking about ethics and beliefs, that sometimes she sounds that way about that too.
Mm-hmm.
But I know she has some solid faith in certain things.
Yeah.
None of us know everything of what we believe. We have to keep learning. But
Right.
I'm just trying to clarify that you're not saying that all religions are right just because you're learning about all these different religions, right?
Right, I'm not saying all the
See, I was
religions
afraid
are-
people might think that because some people talk that way. Like, well, all the religions are right, and it doesn't matter what you believe.
Well, parts are right and wrong in all religions.
Yeah, but people say, well, it doesn't matter what you believe, because whatever you believe is what's going to happen to you, and that's not really all.
No. It matters what you believe, because what you believe, it influences what choices you make.
Right.
And what you do.
So it does matter, but I just wanted to
Right.
clarify that because I
Right.
knew you didn't believe that way, but some people do, and I didn't want that to be taken wrong because you did sound abstract about morals and
Yeah.
values, and I didn't want to mislead anybody that might misunderstand the way you're talking.
Yeah. But, okay, but anyway, like I was trying to make a point that I'm not abstract. I'm very concrete and physical with specific examples. So, have you ever seen one of those pictures of a dismembered fetus where this unborn baby, it was crushed, it's flattened, its head and its arms and legs are all separated from its torso, and it's just laying there in pieces? Have you ever seen that? Do you want that done to you? Then you probably shouldn't do it to someone else. The golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and don't do unto others what you don't want them to do to you. And the golden rule is in all the religions, philosophies. If you look through
it is.
You'll find it's a universal principle in every culture, every country, every religion, every philosophical school there is. The golden rule is there, and it's this simple idea that what you want done to you, you do to others. And by this degree, this is how murder is wrong. See, the whole reason that we know murder is wrong is because people don't like it when they're murdered. They don't like when people hurt or kill them, and that's why they try to defend themselves. That's why people go to great lengths. The very fact that people, for example, some people, they keep guns in the house, which I don't. I think it's a bad idea and it's dangerous. But the fact that people are willing to, keep guns in their house to defend themselves from somebody who might attack and kill them shows that if they don't want to be killed, that's the same reason they should not go out and just shoot some innocent person,
Right.
who's not doing anything to them. Now, there's a place for self-defense, but here's what happens: is people, they're so afraid that people are going to come kill them that what they will do is they will go out and preemptively attack others and kill anybody that they might view as a threat.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. But what people need to instead do is they need to start realizing they're equal to others, and if they don't want to be killed, then not to kill somebody else.
Yeah.
And it's very simple. What I'm saying is, yes, people should learn about religions and philosophies, but the golden rule is a very solid principle that you can find in any religion,
That's
any
true.
philosophy.
That's true.
And it is part of Christianity, and Jesus even mentioned it in the Gospels and his sermons and stuff.
Yeah. But like you said, if you study different religions, you'll find out.
Yeah.
That's in every religion. Buddhism. Now, it's not, is it in Islam too, though?
I'm pretty sure it is. I mean, you could.
Then some of the stuff
Yeah.
contradicts us because some of them believe in killing everybody.
Well,
not everybody.
Well, that's the thing is honestly whether you're reading the Old Testament of the Bible or whether you're reading the Quran, there's going to be some parts that say, oh well, don't kill, other parts that say do kill, and that's why there's contradictions in holy books. Every single book, every religion, there's contradictions, and why are there contradictions? Because different humans at different times wrote different parts of it, and they had different opinions on who should be killed when. So that's the problem. Is I'm not saying that all religions are all true. What I'm saying is these books are like any other books. You have to evaluate what is the message of this book. Or in modern times, we have movies and we have podcasts. Like when you watch a cartoon, what is the message that you're getting out of that cartoon? Even little kids shows, these shows for the 5-year-old kids watch, like Dora the Explorer or whatever the kids are watching these days. I don't know what they're watching now. I'm still watching My Little Pony, but the point is, what is the message that you're getting from this? And
there's always a message, and you have to use discernment.
Yes.
And so, like, even studying the Bible, even though on the whole I believe the Bible, I still keep studying so I can find out. And I'm studying a lot about how the Bible was written and how we can discern which parts were really from God or which things were translated wrong or, put in the wrong place in the Bible and causing confusion. So there's a lot of factors. But it's true, we have to keep searching and we have to prayerfully learn to discern and have wisdom, because there's things I watch that are supposed to be Christian programs. And I have to filter it through some wisdom, because it'll say some odd stuff and I'll think, now wait a minute. I'm not going to just swallow it all.
Yeah.
And that's, a lot of people are so gullible and they just swallow it all. And they get confused because they're believing all these contradictory things.
Well, yeah, and see, here's the problem: is a person can't just take a one book and say that it's all true. Just like you just can't take all the opinions of one person. Not even me, as if it's all. Not even me.
As knowledgeable as you are.
Because since I'm supposedly the great abstract autistic philosopher person,
Well, I didn't say you're right about everything. I just said you sound abstract.
No, people just think I'm right because I sound smarter than them. But the point is, you need to have a foundation of what you believe, because otherwise, if you just listen to, well, this person had a near-death experience, and, I died, and, these people went to heaven, these people went to hell, and the cow jumped over the moon, and it's like...
Now, that part might be true.
I personally believe that part. Or another person, they might die for 23 minutes or whatever, and they're like, oh, well, I went to heaven, and everybody is a unicorn, and they poop rainbows. It's like, okay, that's the place I want to go right there. But the point is that different people are going to tell you different stories.
Right, and see, some things are legitimate, and people really do have these near-death experiences, but then a lot of counterfeits get in there too, and you got to watch out for the counterfeits. And if it doesn't line up with the truths you already know, from scripture or whatever, then something's off. And sometimes people add things to it to try to give a, in fact, let's go ahead and use the example of what we were talking about earlier. I've been noticing people who try to put prophecies on there about the end times on some of these videos. And even though we're not supposed to set dates about, the end of the world and Mark of the Beast and all that, a lot of people still kind of at least generally try to do that. And I've been seeing some things out there recently, because now we're in 2026. People putting things, videos on there about how, oh, well, I had a vision, and 2026, the world's going to end. We're going to have this disaster in January, and then this disaster in February, and this disaster in March, all the way through. And then by December, we're going to have, people are going to be accepting the mark of the beast. Okay, see, that's hitting a little too close to trying to set dates and predict things. And you got to be careful about that. Because if that was really what was going to happen, God would show you what to do about it. And I noticed that they would give these predictions, and then if that month had just passed, by the time that's aired, then they quit talking about whatever was predicted for that month that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And it creates fear in people, and we need to just fall back on God and His wisdom and listen and discern and balance it with other things that we know are true. And, Jesus told us to be wise and to be aware that the end times are here, but not to, He wouldn't just, all of a sudden expect everybody to swallow everything they hear from one person who claims they heard it from God.
Yeah.
You got to be careful, because we were always also talking about how that's exactly what the psychics and people do too.
Yeah.
They play these games, these tricks. So it not only, there are true prophets, but then there are false prophets.
Yep.
And we were talking about, in fact, go ahead and share what you were talking about earlier, which is true.
Yeah.
How people who say, oh, I know how to predict, I have ESP, I can tell you things.
Well, yeah, so basically here's what they do is, like, they will be in crowds of people that pretend they're a psychic or some prophet or whatever, and they're going to say, well, there's a person whose name starts with C, and you had a falling out with a friend, you had a disagreement, and you need to reconcile that relationship. But what they're going to do is they're going to say something so vague that it's going to be true for so many people. There's going to be one person in the audience that, like, they're speaking about me. They must have heard from God. And really, it's a simple mathematical fact that when you speak in vague generalities of things that happen to almost everybody at some point in their life, then somebody's going to think it's a prophecy for them. But that's like me being in a crowd of 1,000 people and saying, someone in this room farted. now it's true, but it was me that farted. And
silly.
And somebody else who may have farted recently, they might think that I know that they farted. I don't, but I was speaking about my own fart. That's
See, now this one gets so silly. Before we ever get done with a serious podcast with this silly sense of humor. But that was exactly the example I was asking for. But of course you had to do that.
But that's the point, is they speak of something that is so obviously true. And
common, yeah.
Yeah.
Just like, I've heard, things like that too, where they'll say, well, there's someone and their birthday is in March.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people with a birthday in March. That doesn't mean anything else they have to say about that person is true or from God.
Yeah, see, it's different. And first of all, if there is a specific prophecy for a specific person, here's what actually happens, is that person knows who it's for. They go to that person specifically and tell them, because God gave them information and told them which person it's for.
And also, that person themselves will know inside whether that's true. Because God will prepare their heart and tell them in some way first, and then it just gets confirmed through another person.
Yeah.
But if you know something's not true, and then somebody tries to convince you something's true about you, then there's something wrong. Because God isn't going to just have somebody else tell you things. He'll speak to you first inside. And even if you have trouble hearing from God, He begins to, eventually you'll have a knowing inside whether it's from God or not. So don't let people bully you and convince you things about yourself that, God will show you too And
Yep.
other people's prophecies should just confirm what God has already spoken to you in some way shown you. And so that's why I don't get thrown off by some of these things that I see and hear, because if it doesn't line up with what the wisdom God's already given me or what I know, if it totally it talks about one scripture but totally contradicts another, because we've all been, Jesus warned that, we don't know the day or the hour when Jesus is returning. But every time something looks like what we've heard about the end times, we assume that any new thing coming along is the mark of the beast.
Yeah.
And then everybody freaks out. God will show us, and we will know. And people aren't going to accept the mark of the beast accidentally. Because, first of all, God's not that unfair. We'll know what's going on. If we're listening to God, we'll be aware of what choices we're making.
Yeah.
And we can't be tricked into it. The devil is just trying to scare people that against their own will, they're going to be forced to take the mark of the beast. So we need to watch out and not let fear and these prophets, scare us and tell us, well, it's the end of the age and this bad thing's going to happen and that bad thing's going to happen. And then all of a sudden they don't mention it again if that month has passed that they said this horrible thing was going to happen.
Well, yeah.
We got to watch out.
And also, let's look at the real motivations for this. What people do when they try to make up these prophecies, they're trying to get people to believe them as a credible person. So these people will then basically listen to every word and base their life on what they say. And that'll probably lead into what was like a Jim Jones situation where everybody ends up killing themselves and stuff. Because that's the thing is, what that's doing is somebody jumps off a bridge and then everybody else does it. So don't look to a human. What I'm saying is, don't look to one human or one religion or one book as your leader. Because they will all disappoint you at some point.
That's what causes there to be cults.
Yes.
One of the signs of a cult is a strong leader who wants everybody to listen to them and obey them. And they exalt themselves as though they are God. And you should listen to them and no one else. Whenever it's that, because like we've talked about before, God works through all his people. He works through us, and we each have different gifts. That's why, in his true church, we're all contributing, and no one person is the big boss or knows it all, and everybody has to obey them. When they start doing that, they're getting way off course.
Yep.
Because Jesus is the head of the church, and no one other human being is, and we all have to stay under the authority of Jesus that are involved in his true church. And so when you start getting off to where one person dominates the whole scene and tells everybody what to think, what to do, that's when it becomes a cult. And you got to watch out for that. And that's what's happening with these people who claim to be prophets. Well, you got to believe what I say.
Yeah.
And it does get scary, but that's just it. We need to be discerning and recognize when that kind of thing is happening.
Yeah, and see, here's the thing is, part of it is people, should not be looking to just one person about everything. And also, nothing should all just depend on one person. Mm-hmm. Because then what happens when that person dies? If you get all your instructions for life from some person, like if you just do whatever your parents tell you or whatever your husband does, tells you to get an abortion or whatever, then what happens when that person is no longer there? If they die or they're no longer in your life for some other reason, then you have to start thinking for yourself. So you might as well start to begin with. You have to realize that.
And how Jesus warned us that there would be many false Christs and false prophets in the last days. So that's something we do know about the last days. And that seemed to be what's already happening, even with these prophets that are claiming they know all about the last days. That's a good example of what Jesus warned everybody about. And so you're right. Depending on one person, one human being is dangerous. We need to always look to God. We need to always be aware that God will confirm it through more than one person, and not have one person dominating the scene and telling everybody else what to think, what to do. That's when you get into trouble.
Yeah. And here's the thing that's this strange too, because this is sort of relevant to our topic is, see, here about Jesus. See, the whole point is Jesus, even though they killed him, he still came back to life. He defeated death, and I believe that. And I don't talk about it much because I sound like crazy enough without bringing it into that, but it's not even hard to believe, because for me, what I start seeing is I see that life, even the physical world that I see every day, continually renews itself. And I look at the very fact that, that plants and animals, including humans, do reproduce, even though I don't really like the process by which that happens, obviously. But the point is that if I see that in the physical world, where the plants die in the winter, it gets too cold and the plants die, but then their seeds start, and growing the next spring. And I see that constant renewal keep happening in the physical world that we observe every day. I see no reason to believe that Jesus couldn't raise from the dead, or that we experience an afterlife, and that even if this body is killed, that's not even the real us, and the real us lives on.
Yeah.
So basically, it's like Celine Dion's song, "My heart, I believe that the heart does go on."
Yeah.
And I think it's important to mention this because people who might be listening to this, there are going to be people with different beliefs, all different religions, or no specific religion at all.
That's true.
And I think that this abortion topic is a very important topic because it really makes you question the meaning of life and death. What is the value of life? And it makes you, by questioning, who lives or who dies, or what person has the right to decide who lives or dies. That's another thing, is I don't think any of us get to decide, well, this person, we'll let them live because I like the way they look better, but this person's kind of ugly, let's kill them.
Remember, ugly lives matter.
Yes, ugly lives matter.
That came up in our last
and we
episode.
should know.
Yeah. We're experts on being ugly.
Yeah, that's why I put on my hat, because my hair is messy.
Yeah. You can't cover up all your ugliness, though, now, can you?
But I have a beautiful personality.
Really? Okay. Even though you like to talk about farts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, do you have any more to add to all that, or is it even safe to ask?
I think I've said all the smart things I can for one night. I think I'm...
You might have said a few other things besides the smart things, too.
Yeah, I may have.
Anyway, we did need to follow up and talk about this subject and just let you know that the March for Life went well, and we think that Chastity was supposed to go, and it was a good experience for her, and we feel like she's made some difference and had some influence. That people that hear what was said, even if they don't react right away, they have it in their head, and it's going to keep coming back to them. And somewhere along the way, you don't know how many lives might be saved because of it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just glad that it happened and that God took care of her and protected her while she was gone, and that we had a good report on that. And we'll just kind of move on from there. And I do know that Lauren wants to join us again soon to talk about some more things concerning depression. And since it's a difficult time in the winter with depression, for one thing, I know it's been hard on me. Winters are really hard on me anyway. But she wants to talk some more about, what people go through, all the time, different struggles with depression. So she wants to do like a follow-up on that subject. And so we're glad to have her join us too. And so as soon as she's able to, we'll be able to do another one with her. And so we're just glad that God's leading us in all this, and He's helping us cover a lot of different subjects, but hopefully it's helping everybody. I know it's helping me just to be able to talk about it, and Chastity says the same thing.
Yeah.
So, anyway, should we let these people go from this conversation?
Yeah. You better go and listen to something else before we say something dumb.
I think it's a little too late for that.
Or before I fart again.
Oh man! I think that the theme of this is about farts again. Now you always change the topic to something ridiculous.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We're gonna go. Be excellent to each other and party on, dudes.
Yes, I have loved you with an everlasting love. I have loved you. I have drawn you. Yes, 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 I have loved you with an everlasting love.
People specifically. I am the last person you might expect to see at a pro-life event because I am not aligned with a specific church, political party, or anything else that you have been told is the foundation of defending the unborn. Still, I do follow the golden rule as taught by Jesus and other great teachers. As a former fetus, I speak for those who have not lived to speak for themselves. I speak for the unborn humans who were declared unworthy of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Each one of them was a human who would have been capable of doing many of the things I enjoy. I am not more or less worthy of life than those who were aborted for whatever reasons invented by doctors, politicians, their parents, and whoever else convinced them that murder was the only solution to a child they saw as a problem. As an asexual and transgender person, I speak for many of the LGBTQIA+ people who were murdered or driven to suicide because they looked different, loved a person of the wrong gender, or were born with a solar body that could not conform to the binary that society arbitrarily decided was required to earn family, friends, employment, housing, or medical care. For me personally, being pro-life is about protecting the lives of the most innocent souls who have done nothing wrong but have been killed and robbed of their life and future choices. The pro-choice philosophy does not respect their choices to live and become what they were conceived to be. Every single choice we make depends on being allowed to live long enough to know what these choices are, and also to understand that no choice would be possible unless our parents had chosen to let us live. The pro-choice philosophy does not ultimately care about our bodily autonomy because this ideology says it would have been completely okay for every single one of us to have been murdered in the womb. The only choice offered by those claiming to be pro-choice is abortion. I also ask you to forgive many of the other rainbow people who have been deceived into the pro-choice ideology. which promised to respect their bodily autonomy but failed to deliver on these promises and only gave them death as a solution. Every one of the gay, transgender, and intersex people can be targeted for termination by detecting genetic defects which make us different, even at the DNA level. Discrimination against bi people is just as common both before and after we are born. If the mainstream cisgender, heterosexual, pro-life people and the LGBTQIA+ community work together and remember who the real enemy is, it would lead to a much safer world for all of us. There are many misunderstandings based on false information. People like me and the others in the Rainbow Pro-Life Alliance are a bridge to help the two sides see that we are not enemies by nature, but because we have been given the wrong messages by those who profit from confusing us to win elections or make money from killing us. And despite what you may have heard, the pro-life movement is the greatest ally that the LGBTQIA+ community can have, because you are fighting for our lives, even if you don't truly know who or what we are. You may not know much about my community, nor do you have to agree with me about everything. But I'm here today to tell you that as long as we agree that it is wrong to kill the most innocent people before they have a chance to live their lives, I think we can come to a better understanding over time and bridge the divide between the rainbow people and the rest of the pro-life movement. Thank you.
Thank you, Chastity. Connie, are you here yet? I was told Connie was